Henry Lee and the Honk here. This episode was recorded shortly before news broke that Israel and Hamas have reached agreement on the first phase of an end to the war in Gaza, including the release of all remaining Israeli hostages by as early as this coming Monday.
If that happens, we'll cover it in full in next week's episode.
And if it doesn't happen, we'll cover that in next week's episode and probably throw our hands up like the rest of the world.
Could this be the Nobel Peace Prize for Trump?
Honky, I think it might be the Nobel Peace Prize for Marco Rubio. He is far and away the most and possibly the only competent person in the entire administration.
Well, stay tuned. But for now, for our very special take on the news that has definitely happened, please enjoy this week's episode of Instant Experts.
This week on Instant Experts, the US declares war on America.
Can Trump get a peace prize for ending the war he started?
Pam Bondi declares war on the rule of law.
Bondi really is a beach.
And the Honk reviews Taylor Swift's new album.
She has been clogging up my DMs all week.
Clogging up your dreams, more like it.
Possibly unclogging them.
Welcome back to Instant Experts, Insurrection Edition. It's all the latest news explained by idiots. Here to keep you sane in a crazy world. I'm Henry Lee, and as always, I'm here with my dear friend, the Honk. Honky, welcome.
Henry, great to be here, and what a week. We do say it every week. This is a show about crooks, fuckwits, and morons, and all I can say is thank God. Can you imagine if this was a show about politicians who gave a fuck about their people or the rule of law? We'd be in a lot of trouble.
Indeed. Now, what caught your eye this week?
Just so much going on, including the US government shutdown, which we'll talk about a bit. But the big story is the United States invading itself. Trump has mobilized the National Guard in various red, that is Republican states, to enter into various blue states, that is Democratic states, and, quote, restore order, round up whoever Trump doesn't like. Basically, ICE raids on steroids.
I thought the ICE guys were already on steroids. How is the US federal government invading the states when it has also shut down?
Good question. The troops aren't shut down. They are deemed an essential service.
Okay, well, that makes sense.
Problem is they don't get paid.
Right, because by law, the US government is not allowed to pay its staff unless the Congress passes an appropriations bill or short-term funding bill, neither of which, as at the time of recording, it has done. So non-essential workers get sent home without pay, and essential workers stay at work without pay.
The good news is the federal troops are getting help invading the states from other states.
From other states. Sounds like a Civil War honk. That's one of my favourite Guns N' Roses songs, by the way, Civil War.
I think it sucks, like most of Guns N' Roses.
Well, you would be wrong. It's also got that great clip from Cool Hand Luke right at the start of that. Remember that?
I do remember that.
What we have here is failure to communicate.
I remember that. And then he says, some men you just can't reach.
So you get what we had here last week.
Which is the way he wants it.
Well, he gets it. I don't like it any more than any man. Etc.
Yeah,
to me, that's the guitars come in.
That's the highlight of the song, by the way. That's it. Anyway, what you just described is basically what's happening in the US right now.
You can hear the guitars, can't you?
Try to block them out. Anyway, back to the show for a minute. Trump is trying to send federal troops into Chicago and Portland to round up immigrants and crack down on protesters against ICE. The problem is the Illinois governor and the attorney general have filed a lawsuit to prevent the federalization of Illinois National Guard, and the same thing has happened in Oregon.
So what's Trump done?
He's called up troops from California and Texas.
But isn't California Democratic under Gavin Newsom?
Yeah, I mean, it's a total get fucked. And that's, in fact, also why he didn't tell Newsom. He federalized the California National Guard without even telling the governor. And now California is suing the United States too.
What about Texas?
Well, Texas, as we've talked about many times in the show, is different. That is run by the great Republican governor, Greg Abbott.
Yeah, he's the one who said that trying to find who was responsible for 35 children dying in the Texas floods a few months back was for losers. When he was the one who refused federal money to install a flood warning system because the money came from Biden.
Yeah. I also liked, it's just like American football. There's always next season. Yeah, unless it's your fucking kid who's dead. So Abbott of Texas has authorized the deployment of 400 Texas National Guard troops to Illinois and Oregon to help good old ICE.
I thought the Republicans were the party of states' rights.
Well, they used to be. Now they're the party of unfettered presidential power.
I would like to understand the law on this one. You're an eminent former lawyer. What is the National Guard?
And the National Guard is a unique arm of the US military, I was pleased to learn, that serves both state and federal roles. So its members are part-time military personnel who can be activated for various missions from disaster relief to combat operations.
So it's like our Army Reserve.
It's actually not. Army Reserve is federal only, it's not state, and that's where the National Guard comes in.
Wasn't Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defence, whom we talked about last week, in the National Guard when he served in Iraq and Afghanistan?
That's right, although we neglected to mention that his roles were civil affairs officer and training instructor, respectively.
Oh, right. So he was pushing pens around Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah, as he always said, with tears in his eyes, no pen left behind. Anyway, the default is that the National Guards are state-based,
right,
with the state governor acting as the commander-in-chief. But the National Guard can be federalised by the president in certain circumstances. The right of the president comes from a law called Title 10. The problem now for Trump is that the National Guard members federalised under Title 10 cannot perform domestic law enforcement duties except as authorised by Congress. And that's because of another law called the Posse Comitatus Act.
Got to be careful with the pronunciation.
Well, in fact, there is very famous footage, the Republican lawmaker pronouncing it as Pussy Comitatus. It's also not Pussy Comitatus.
I'm sure it's not.
Not yet. It's Posse Comitatus, which literally means the power of the county. And it draws a distinction between civilian law enforcement, like sheriffs and police, and the military.
So using the National Guard for domestic law enforcement is not a presidential power.
That's right. That is reserved for Congress.
Has Congress authorised current actions?
No, because Congress isn't even fucking sitting. In fact, the House Speaker, Mike
Throbbin Johnson.
That's right. Delaying the return of Congress as long as possible because Congressman Thomas Massey and Rowett Canner now have the votes they need to order the release of the Epstein Files.
Right.
Those votes, by the way, include a new Arizona Democratic congresswoman who just got elected, but who Johnson is refusing to swear in to stop her being the deciding vote.
The commitment to good governance. That's what I like about it.
Moving.
It's a shit show.
And almost certainly an illegal shit show, unless one other criterion is satisfied, the golden word insurrection, because there is another law called the Insurrection Act, under which Congress delegates to the president the power to deploy federalized National Guard if local authorities cannot maintain order.
And that's what Trump is now claiming, that cities like Portland and Chicago are lawless and require federal intervention, which the governors of those states, not to mention the actual crime statistics, don't agree with.
The whole thing is pure politics, of course, as the governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, summarized very neatly a couple of days ago. Have a listen to this.
Last week, federal agents dressed in camouflage gear conducted a military-style raid on an apartment building in a neighborhood of Chicago. They brought more than 100 agents. Even though it was supposedly a very dangerous mission, they brought dozens of cameras so that they could film their attack in HD for social media.
One more thing on this. Did you see the vision of those Texas National Guard troops on their way?
I did, actually. Yeah, Pete Hegseth must be steaming because they are fat as anything.
Those guys must weigh an average of 120 kilos, which, by the way, is very light, lithe and sexy, I should add.
Well, these guys, ironically, they're going into Illinois. They look like the offensive line of the Chicago Bears circa 1985, including William the Refrigerator Perry.
He was a footballer, right? But he was also a wrestler because he did a match against somebody... I want to say WrestleMania 2. He was the first sort of celebrity sports guy that did an event at WrestleMania.
He was an enormous unit. The ice guys in Illinois from Texas bear a striking resemblance, although maybe a little bit wider than William the Refrigerator Perry. But that's
in the ass. Wider in the ass.
Whiter, I meant.
Whiter. I'm sorry. Also wider in the ass.
And Honky, in relation to all this, I was amused to read the following post by Kristi Noem during the week.
The US Secretary of Homeland Security.
And the former governor of South Dakota, who's best known for shooting her own dog, as well as having no law enforcement experience before running Department of Homeland Security, because who would be needing that? Anyway, her post said, quote, "If Joe Biden federalizes the National Guard, that would be a direct attack on states' rights. Over the last several years, we've seen Democrats try to take away our freedoms of religion, assembly, and speech. We can't let them take away our right to defend ourselves too. South Dakota defends the Constitution."
She sent that during this week?
No, I read it during this week. It was sent while Biden was president.
Of course, right. Just a slight change of position. Of interest, by the way, did Biden ever federalize the National Guard?
He did actually a few times, but mostly for emergency response, including some hurricanes in Louisiana, Texas, and Florida.
Republican states didn't try and invade them.
There was one more, the January 6th storming of the Capitol.
Oh, right.
So the actual insurrection, for which everyone has now been pardoned by Trump.
So just to be clear, the position is an actual insurrection is not an insurrection, but a non-insurrection somehow is?
Fear now in the US is that all this is a precursor to martial law in some parts, which in turn could affect the elections next year, in which the Republicans will otherwise almost certainly lose control of the House.
And I think we know surely who won this week's Cunt of the Week. Or do we?
More of that later. Right now, it's time for our regular shout-outs to listeners. We have loyal listeners all over Australia and all around the world. We've had a very exotic week. New locations like Gwyn Oak in Maryland and Broxburn in West Lothian. We're big in Scotland.
Is that in Edinburgh?
It's west of Midlothian.
Of course.
Which has a football team called the Heart of Midlothian, known as Hearts.
Oh, yes.
That's not important right now.
Sounds like it was. More listeners in Kent in England, becoming like an instant experts hotspot. Gravesend, Sittingbourne, and Maidstone all tuning in this week.
Singapore, France, Germany, Italy, Israel, and South Africa.
Also, Thailand, the Philippines, Korea.
But location of the week is a dead set thriller. In the bronze medal, we've got Santiago in Chile.
I actually have family in Chile.
Where were they in the war? Silver medal.
Running for their fucking lives.
Silver medal. The winner in any other week is the town of Sfax, S-F-A-X, on the east coast of Tunisia, right on the Mediterranean Sea, and a short sail from Malta. King's Landing in season 1 of Game of Thrones before it moved to Dubrovnik.
Well, I mean, Maltese property prices, forget about it. Everyone knows you get more for your money in Dubo. But Sfax in Tunisia, by the way, it just goes to show that country is doing it tough. This capital city could not afford a vowel. I mean, that's how tough times are in Tunisia.
But Honky, the gold medal for location of the week goes to the Seychelles.
Wow.
That golden archipelago off the east coast of Africa with 155 different islands. It's the smallest country in Africa by population with just 100,000 people.
So that's what, like one island per 600 people.
And one of them, that's one person, not one island. One of those 100,000 people is listening to Instant Experts, Honk. So our market share has rocketed to 0.001%.
And yet still no fucking Darwin.
Honky, we also got a whack of nice listener feedback this week.
It was a bonanza. We got a lovely message from newish listener Joanna, who said, quote, loving your podcast, long may it continue. Now, she's a top criminal barrister, by the way.
She'll be handy to have when Trump sends the National Guard into our studios and then has us deported to a prison in Libya or worse, to the private bathroom at the White House.
It's actually not in the White House. The reason they bombed Iran recently actually had nothing to do with nuclear weapons. What they needed was a dunny space for Trump deep enough underground that a Trump anal explosion wouldn't kill millions of civilians. We got that from the CIA. You heard it here first.
We had a new listener this week, Darren in Melbourne, who told us he was in hysterics listening to the show from a spa with his wife.
Instant experts ruining lovemaking opportunities for couples all over the world.
Creating them, Honk. Got him in the mood. We also got an official text through our show notes. This is from a long-time listener called the Acting Chief Justice, and he texted us, Henry and Honk, you are both great cunts. What do you make of that?
Well, that must be a reference to the audio we played last week, mustn't it? Of a young Aussie guy explaining he doesn't care what colour you are. It's all about if you're, quote, a good cunt or a shit cunt.
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe the Acting Chief Justice just thinks we're cunts.
Well, the guy does live in Israel. Hamas Netanyahu. He would know. He knows cunts, right?
On that topic, listener Sharon from Sydney told us that she loved our new Cunt of the Week segment.
Well, she's another really good cunt, Sharon. But Henry, listener feedback of the week has to go surely to James of Sydney. Now, last week, you'll recall, we did the story of the Wisconsin Republican gubernatorial hopeful, Bill Barron, publicly very anti-trans, whose candidacy came to an end, possibly a sticky end, when he turned out also to be a follower online of the trans porn star Jiz Lee.
That's right. And Honk, you tried to smear me by saying Jiz Lee might be a member of the Henry Lee family. But as I pointed out, the Lee family is a broad and accepting church that encourages entrepreneurialism. So that doesn't smear us at all.
Yes, but this detail might, because James from Sydney sent us a photo of Jiz Lee and said not only does he think you, Henry Lee, and Jiz Lee are related, but, quote, the resemblance is so uncanny, I feel Jiz may be Henry Lee's stage name. I have never seen Jiz online while Henry has been speaking. Connect the dots.
Well, I've got to say, I'm just glad that James is enjoying Jiz's work online.
Yeah, he did reveal
They
himself,
appreciate your support.
Another listener, the Donkey Man, these are real names of real listeners, by the way, actually alerted us to the fact that Jiz Lee's legendary film Backseat premiered in Australia this year at the Australian School of Sexuality's 10-day festival, Arsfest.
You were making that up for sure.
It is true. It is called Arsfest. Now, Backseat is a real Jiz Lee movie, and Arsfest is a real festival.
How's that spelled?
It's ASS, the Australian School of Sexuality. So Arsfest.
I see, Arsfest. Well, it sounds like the Donkey Man would have fitted right in.
Yeah, he would have been very popular.
Anyway, thanks to everyone for their feedback. And as they, I presume, like to say at ASFest, keep it coming. Time, as always, for American carnage. And I do want to talk a little bit about US Attorney General Pam Bondi.
Our Pam, friend of the show.
Friend of the show. She's former Attorney General of Florida who let Jeffrey Epstein run rampant on her watch.
And then, as the current federal Attorney General, let Trump know that his name appeared multiple times in the Epstein Files.
Which she also claimed she had on her desk and then decided not to release.
No, I'm sorry. That is not fair. What Pam Bondi actually said was that she had the Epstein Files on her desk. But then the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt clarified that what Pam meant was that Pam did not have the Epstein Files on her desk because they don't exist. What Caroline clarified was that all that Pam meant was she had the original documents about Epstein on her desk.
So 33,000 pages worth.
Yeah, at least.
Epstein Files.
Yeah, that's perfectly plausible explanation, isn't it?
Well, why didn't Pam just release those then?
Because why don't you shut the fuck up before you get us both killed?
Now, Hock, in 2013, Pam Bondi also accepted a $25,000 campaign donation from the Trump Foundation, then dropped an investigation a couple of weeks later into his fraudulent Trump University. So Pam Bondi is hot, a bottle blonde, and crooked. Everything she needs to serve under Trump.
Serving under Trump is probably what Trump was hoping for when he gave her the gig. He has said very strange and creepy things about her, and also about her mum.
Really?
Very strange.
Right. Anyway, so Pam Bondi was before the Senate Judiciary Committee this week. That is the committee that oversees the Department of Justice. And it was quite a performance, Honk. Pam obfuscated on simple questions like, are government officials obliged to follow court orders, whether they agree with them or not?
Yeah, well, that's a bit thorny, isn't it? I mean, come on.
That's a tough one. That's not question 1 on the exam. That's question 100. That's the real tough.
For sure.
But let's listen to some examples of her work. The first relates to the sacking of a lawyer in California called Michelle Beckwith.
Yeah.
She was a district attorney up in Sacramento until 6 hours after she told the head of ICE operations in LA something that he didn't want to hear, specifically that ICE could not arrest people without probable cause, as that would breach a recent court order and, in fact, the US Constitution.
There's a little thing called the Fourth Amendment, and we're not even from the US, but you look at the words of the Fourth Amendment, they're pretty clear, right? They say, and I just happen to have them here because who doesn't have a copy of the US Constitution on the desk of their studio, quote, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized.
Which is why they're constantly going to judges to get search warrants in Law and Order and so on. You need probable cause. Here's Pam Bondi, the most senior legal officer in the US, refusing to acknowledge this basic concept.
My first question, Attorney General, is do you believe that government officials are obligated to follow applicable court orders, whether they agree with them or not? Yes or no?
First, Senator Padilla, I wish that you loved your state of California as much as you hate President Trump. I want to let you know what DEA has been doing, and they are working hand in hand with
I appreciate that.
No, you can't go on for 5 minutes and criticize my agents who are out working without pay right now because you voted to shut down the government.
Mr. Chairman, I asked a simple yes or no question. Attorney General Bondi is refusing
4,500 kilos of fentanyl and 50 million fentanyl.
It gets worse, doesn't it?
It does. Here are her non-answers about Tom Homan. To recap that story, which we covered a couple of weeks ago, during the 2024 election campaign, Trump's future border czar, Tom Homan, who we call Tom the Abominable Homan, was caught on film by FBI agents taking $50,000 in cash in a bag in return for securing favors in a future Trump administration. And when that fact came out, what did the Trump FBI and DOJ under Pam Bondi do? Instead of prosecuting Homan, they buried the evidence. Here's Pam on the Homan case.
What became of the $50,000 cash that the FBI paid to Mr. Homan in a paper bag, evidently?
Senator, as Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche recently stated, the investigation of Mr. Homan was subjected to a full review by the FBI. They found no credible evidence of any wrongdoing.
That was not my question. My question was...
Senator Whitehouse, you're welcome to talk to the FBI.
The report to you. Can't you answer this question?
The investigation of Mr.
Never
Homan
mind. I can see I'm not going to get a straight answer from you to a very simple question.
5 FBI agents.
And Hock, here she is about the Epstein Files.
The traditional owners of the president.
That's right. We acknowledge them on every show.
Now, just a bit of context. What Pam's being asked about here is a story we covered a few episodes back where the journalist Michael Wolff, who was at the time interviewing Jeffrey Epstein for a possible book, says that he was shown photos by Epstein that Epstein had in a safe, Polaroids and so forth, of Trump cavorting with naked young girls, including one which Wolff said showed a suspicious stain on Trump's suit pants. It's pretty gross, which the naked girls were all pointing and laughing at. So here is Pam Bondi being asked about that specifically.
But you won't hear Bondi's voice because she refused to answer.
Did the FBI find those photographs that have been discussed publicly by a witness who claimed Jeffrey Epstein showed them to him? You don't know anything about that. Okay.
The amendment after the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, shocking revelation, that one. But that's the one that allows people on trial not to say anything if it's going to incriminate them. And that's what Bondi sounds like there. And Senator Adam Schiff, who's a nemesis of the Trump administration.
Yeah, in fact, Trump's trying to indict him as well, right?
Senator Schiff summarized Bondi's efforts.
I think it's valuable that the American people get a sense of what you've refused to answer today, or have answered with personal attacks on members of this committee. You were asked whether you consulted with career ethics lawyers, as you promised you would do during your nomination hearing, when you approved the president receiving a $400 million gift from the Qataris. You refused to answer that question. You were asked what role you may have played in asking that Trump's name be flagged in any of the Epstein documents gathered by the FBI. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether Homan kept the $50,000 bribe money. You refused to answer that question. You were asked, did career prosecutors find insufficient evidence to charge James Comey? You refused to answer that question. You were asked, how are military strikes on these boats in the Caribbean legal? And you refused to even answer that question. You were asked whether you believe immigration officials have to abide by court orders. You wouldn't even answer that question.
The basic refusal to acknowledge the rule of law is scary. And the deflection tactic that Bondi has been using, you can see every time she does it, she's looking at her notes. She's been briefed to do it.
Yeah, change the subject and attack the questioner.
That tactic of hurling accusations at the Democratic senators is pathetic. But I've got to say, it'd be even more pathetic if a lot of what Bondi was saying was not also true. Because to me, the problem here is not just that Trump and all his cronies are obviously crooks, fuckwits, and morons, but a lot of these Democrats are too. We haven't had time to include it, but one of the accusations she hurled, Bondi, at the Rhode Island Senator Sheldon Whitehouse was, if the Epstein Files are so crucial, why didn't the Democrats release them? For example, the flight logs under Biden, which in fact the Trump administration has now released. And Whitehouse gives this sort of half-assed answer. Well, a colleague of mine said she wanted them and I said she should put it in writing. But then she didn't, so nothing ever came of it. Democrats did not want them out at the time because they knew there were Democrats on those flights, e.g. probably Bill Clinton. So they didn't want that out till it could also hurt Trump. So they were sort of playing politics too.
I thought the answer was that Ghislaine Maxwell was on trial and they didn't want to compromise the trial.
Yeah, possibly. By the way, did you see that the Supreme Court's refused to hear her appeal?
I did not see that.
Just during this last couple of days. And so now the only chance she has is a pardon by Donald Trump. And there's obviously no chance of that.
No, what's that paying on Sportsbet? $1.20? Still honk to me. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the New York Congresswoman, better known as AOC, summarized the whole situation brilliantly in this final clip.
From all the movies that we see growing up, I thought fascist takeover attempts were going to be architected by evil geniuses. I was not expecting how unearned, nepotistic, mediocre, and just dumb so many of the people architecting this were going to be.
Yeah, that's a nice soundbite, Henry, but can we just be honest? You only played that because you are madly in love with her.
Okay, I think AOC is an outstanding leader and politician. She is the voice of a new generation.
That is not the reason you like her, though, is it?
Hey, smoking hot are people too, and they deserve a chance to be listened to.
Look, I'll give you, it was a very good soundbite.
Yeah, I had to play it a few times. Very distracting watching the video that came with it. So, okay, Honk, it's got to be time for quick shots. Last week, we talked about growing concerns, or forget growing concerns, talking about the fact that Trump has dementia.
Played this warring audio from Trump's appearance at Pete Hegseth's Magical Mystery Military meeting.
That's right, the no beers, you fat fucks meeting.
That's the formal title. Yeah.
No, fat cunts.
Now, Trump clearly heard our episode and our concerns because this week he came out swinging with a corker of a speech to reassure us and the world that he is absolutely fine. Take a listen.
Please remember, I wrote about Osama bin Laden exactly 1 year ago, 1 year before he blew up the World Trade Center. And I said, you got to watch Osama bin Laden. And the fake news would never let me get away with that statement unless it was true. But I said 1 year before to Pete Hegseth, I said 1 year before, where's Pete? In the book, I wrote whatever the hell the title, I can't tell you. But I can tell you there's a page in there devoted to the fact that I saw somebody named Osama bin Laden, and I didn't like it, and you got to take care of him. They didn't do it. A year later, he blew up the World Trade Center, so we got to take a little credit because nobody else is going to give it to me. You know the old story? They don't give you credit, just take it yourself.
What the fuck is he trying to say?
That he would have prevented September 11 if only people had listened to him.
But he says he spoke to Pete Hegseth, but Pete Hegseth wasn't around in 2000. What's he talking about?
Yeah, Pete Hegseth was 20 in 2000. I don't think it appeared in a book that Trump wrote. He made up the whole thing.
But in all seriousness, what is he trying to say? What does he think he's trying to say?
If they'd listened, he would have prevented September 11.
If he'd actually also said it, which he didn't in fact say, because he never put it in the book, as you said.
In the imaginary book, exactly.
Fucking hell. By the way, to really prove Trump does not have dementia, the White House has this week gotten Google to agree to stop letting its AI allow you to search for the two words together, Trump and dementia.
Is that true?
I tried this, and I can confirm that AI will not produce any results when you do that on Google.
Wow.
That's how you know it's definitely not true.
Exactly. Okay, Honky, that brings us to the return of our new segment, the one that Sharon enjoyed, Cunt of the Week.
Here we go. A little theme music.
I'm a cunt. I love it. Who's the winner this week, Honky?
Well, it is Donald Trump. But complication, we have two contenders from Donald Trump. You talked before about the US government being shut down. Now, just a quick bit of background. That is because the Republicans wanted the Democrats to agree to a funding extension of the federal government. Democrats, in turn, wanted the Republicans to agree not to defund, which they're currently proposing to do in their One Big Beautiful Bill, a whole lot of government subsidy of Obamacare, that is the US private healthcare system, without which subsidies, millions of Americans are going to end up without any private health insurance at all. We also mentioned federal workers who are furloughed during shutdown don't get paid. But normally when the government resumes, they get that pay as back pay. The Speaker of the House, Mike Throbbin Johnson, who's Republican, has been careful to assure people that that will happen. Right. Now, Trump has come out and said, actually, maybe we won't pay furloughed federal workers if they've been working on Democrat-created initiatives. What a fucking cunt.
Well, that's a very strong contender, Honky, but I have another one. Check out this story. So the US turns 250 in 2026 next year. Trump's Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, has announced that Trump will appear on a $1 coin, which obviously panders to Trump's ego and is therefore good for Scott Bessent's career. Complication, apart from Trump being entirely unworthy of the honor, is that there are two laws, one from 1866 and one from 2020, that say only dead people can appear on the side of a US coin.
Well, that's good, isn't it? If Trump can meet that requirement of being dead, aren't we all in favour?
That's true. But unfortunately, Trump being Trump doesn't acknowledge the existence of rules. He doesn't want to appear on one side of the coin. He wants to appear on both sides of the coin.
What?
So on one side will be his profile. On the reverse side will be, get this, him standing in front of the American flag, a la his alleged assassination attempt, with his raised hand saying, fight, fight, fight.
However you slice it, we have a winner, cunt of the week, Donald Trump, just narrowly ahead of Donald Trump. We salute you.
Time for entertainment news. And the big story this week, and we alluded to it briefly right at the end of last week's show, was the release of Taylor Swift's brand new album, Life of a Showgirl. We've said before on the show that we're just two straight middle-aged white guys who happen to love Taylor Swift. And Honk, you've really leaned into it this week because you actually asked your daughter to take you along to the special theatrical launch of the album in cinemas.
Henry, my 10-year-old daughter, who by definition, therefore, is a massive Swiftie, demanded that I take her to the Life of a Showgirl special cinematic event, which I reluctantly agreed to do.
I don't believe you. Why were you reluctant?
Well, it just takes me so long to get ready for these things. You know, I got my hair, I got my makeup, got to choose my outfit. I got to make my outfit.
Well, at least you're good with a hairdryer, Honk. I know that from experience. How do you go with a bedazzler? Do you just pick one up at Spotlight on account or what?
That's just not how it works with a bedazzler. If you knew, Henry, I am a regular rhinestone cowboy. Why do you ask, by the way? What were you thinking? You want to do your top or your face, or like somewhere a little more intimate, maybe? Or
I think that might be Gisley you're thinking of.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah.
Rhinestones in all the wrong places. Let me swiftly change topic to the actual album, no pun intended. You were a noted film critic in a past life and maybe a little bit of music too. What do you make of the album?
Overall, I think it's actually really good. Specifically, I think there are 9 tracks that are really good, 3 tracks maybe not so much. Although, in fairness, one of those tracks is the big single, Fate of Ophelia, which a lot of people love. I also happen to think, since you made the fatal error of asking me what I thought, some of the songs are a bit in the wrong order. And particularly, she opens the album with these 2 tracks, which are sort of in the position like they're meant to be bangers, but I don't actually think they are bangers.
Actually, I did know that you thought that because in your glorious honky OCD way, you sent me, and this is 100% true, not 1, but 2 new Taylor Swift album playlists during the week, both of which you created.
Yeah, what's wrong with that?
The first is your proposed ideal reordering of the new album.
Yeah, that's perfectly normal. Oh, by the way, I should say, it's so good, by the way. You know what we should do? I should put it on the show notes for fans of the show who are that Venn diagram of Taylor Swift fans who want to do their own playlist of a huge album and fans of our show.
Forget the show notes. Just send it to Tay directly. I'm sure she'll be fascinated at your deep insights.
I've done it before.
Listeners, the second playlist the honk sent me, and again, this is 100% true, was a nod to the Aussie bloke in Manchester from last week, talked about earlier. The second playlist is called Life of a Showgirl, 9 times good cunts / 3 times shit cunts edition.
The full title, I think you'll find, Henry, was Life of a Showgirl - 9 times good cunts, 3 times shit cunts edition for Henry. So if you cared, you would know I personalised it.
Well, I have to say I did find it very funny.
Too kind. But if I may just say a moment about this album.
Another moment.
Another moment. There are some fans who don't like it, and fair enough. But this is the Taylor Swift album I have most wanted to hear again since Lover and before that 1989. And not Midnights, not Folklore, not Evermore. Yeah. I don't think this is as good as 1989, but I think it's still really good. And another thing, the amount of
Can I go get a coffee?
The amount of revisionist critics bullshit. Any bad review I've seen says, we were all waiting for a great album after the disappointment of Tortured Poets Department. Really? Because I seem to remember every critic in the world nonstop jerking it hard about that album. Last thing I promise. These fuckwits online who are saying, oh, the album's a flop. Life of a Showgirl has every chance of becoming the highest selling album in 1 week in world history.
It's going okay, is what you're saying.
If, as expected, Life of a Showgirl debuts at number 1 on the Billboard 200, it will be Taylor Swift's 15th number 1 album, betted only with 19 number 1 albums by the Beatles. You can say you don't like it and you're still a good cunt, but don't be a shit cunt and say it's not a hit. You sound like Donald Trump. Thanks for listening. Love to all.
Well, for those of you still with us, the other thing this week I found amusing about Taylor Swift was that instead of placing a normal birth announcement when she was born, her dad put an ad in the Wall Street Journal.
He was a finance guy, I think, wasn't he?
He was at Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner and Smith.
Jeez, it would suck be Pierce, Fenner and Smith, wouldn't it? Shoved head first into the dustbin of history.
But Lynch is gone now too. It's just Merrill. To be fair, Merrill started the firm. Lynch joined him later. And Pierce and Fenner came in through different mergers and Smith was just some exec in the mid-1900s. So I don't feel too sorry for them.
Yeah. Can we talk about the ad now? Can we stop ranting hysterically?
I thought I might talk about Skadden, Slate, Mar and Flom.
Oh, please. Would you like to dissect the genealogy of Skadden, Slate, Mar and Flawn in real time?
I'm sorry for being interested.
Well, you're trying to be interesting.
Okay. When she was born, Taylor Swift's father placed the following ad in the Wall Street Journal dated Wednesday, December the 13th, 1989, of course. Exactly 2 months, by the way, after AOC was born on October the 13th, 1989.
Yeah.
But
that wonderful politician whose policies you admire so much.
I admire them frantically. The Wall Street Journal ad says, new issue, 1 share, Taylor Allison Swift, weight 8 pounds 4 ounces, height 21 inches, pursuant to the hostile takeover and subsequent merger of Andrea Finlay and Scott Swift in February 1988. This spin-off is blue-scarred in Pennsylvania and Texas, stabilizing procedures unnecessary. Issuer Andrea Finlay Swift, underwriter Scott Kingsley Swift, assistant vice president Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner, and don't forget Smith. I thought it was cute.
Kind of reminds me of that old story from Hollywood about the movie Magambo.
Yeah.
The story goes that the producer tells the studio the film is called Magambo, and the studio says Magambo is a stupid name for a movie. And the producer says, yeah, but it stars Clark Gable. Clark Gable being the biggest movie star of his time.
Gone with the Wind and so on.
The studio says, well, Magambo is still a stupid name for a movie, but Magambo starring Clark Gable is a fucking great name for a movie. The point being that given how Tay-Tay has turned out, I think Dad probably got away with that one.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Now, Honk, quickly in sport, the big event of the week was the NRL Grand Final. Phenomenal game and was the highest rating TV event of the year. I enjoyed it from the comfort of the Morningstar Hotel, along with plenty of Melbourne Storm fans.
The Melbourne Storm was not actually in the grand final. You'd asked to put that game on at the Morningstar Hotel, or frankly, any pub in the city of Melbourne, you would have been beaten to death. Sorry, patted gently to death by the hard men who grew up playing AFL.
Okay, Honk, if you're so tough, where were you when the grand final was on?
I went to see Rent.
What?
Rent, the musical.
So the Taylor Swift movie was not enough for one weekend. You also dashed off to a lavish musical while the grand final was on.
I'm a real man, Henry, but I'm also a father, and my daughter, the same 10-year-old, wanted to go.
I can't believe you're hiding behind your daughter again.
I do want to say, I've had a lot of fun calling you a Philistine for a good chunk of my life every time you ridiculed me for going to a musical. Like, again, this time with Rent, I told you in advance I was going to Rent. I remember you said to me, like, it's dated, overrated, and virtually all the songs are shit.
Yeah, it sucks.
And guess what, Mr. Senior Theatre Critic for the New York Times? Rent was dated, overrated, nearly every song is shit. We actually gunned it home to catch the last 10 minutes of the NRL Grand Final.
Yes, well, it was an outstanding game.
It was a brilliant game. To me, that was the game you'd show people who don't like NRL to show them why people like NRL.
Yeah, two teams who deserved to be there. Incredibly close score, 4 points in it. Could have gone either way. Nail-biter right down to the last seconds of the game.
And almost as much violence as in the women's NRL Grand Final. Wherever you saw, but a few white women made a fatal decision, try to push around some women from the Pacific Islands who all have apostrophes in their surname. And isn't that the rule? The more apostrophes in a Pacific Islander NRL player's last name, the more of your teeth you're going to end up swallowing if you dumb it up to try and punch on with them.
I did not see the women's grand final.
It was brutality, absolute brutality.
Anyway, back to the men's grand final. Honk, congratulations to Brisbane Broncos, and especially Honk, their coach, Michael Madge Maguire, who used to coach our team, the perennial battlers, the West Tigers.
Yeah, until that is we got rid of him 3 years ago because he was too hard on the players. From memory, he seemed to think like being fitter, faster and stronger than the other teams might be good for the game.
Yeah, that's not quite right. They got rid of him because the team had come 11th and 13th out of 16 teams in the previous 2 seasons.
Yeah, how'd we go after that?
Well, we came last 3 years in a row.
So after Maguire, we went from 11th and 13th to 16th, 16th and 16th.
Actually, an extra team came into the NRL 2 years ago, the Dolphins. So we actually came 16th, 17th and 17th. But on the upside, we rocketed back to 13th in 2025, 13th being the position we finished in Maguire's last season.
I feel so better.
Okay, folks, that's all we have time for.
Whoa. What about the wrestling, WWE?
I'm sorry, Honk, we're out of time.
But I'm going all the way to Perth this weekend. This is why we're recording a day early. It's WWE Crown Jewel, one of the biggest events of the year. It's John Cena's last ever match in Australia. It's Rhea Ripley, who's even hotter than AOC.
Can you catch dementia, Honk? Because I think you have. Maybe we'll do that next week. Find us in all the usual locations, especially TikTok and Instagram. Please share us on socials. It really helps us if you send this podcast to your friends and rate us in the Apple Podcast Store. Give us 5 stars because that really helps with the algorithm.
Guys, as we say every week, also please check out our show notes, like a rundown of what's in the show, which you can get from wherever you get this podcast. You can send us a text from our show notes and we'll read it on the show, like with the one we did this week from the Acting Chief Justice. You can send us a voicemail direct from our show notes and we'll play it on the show. And do read our show notes for even dumber jokes that are always written by Henry, never by me. One more thing, we want to hear from you. We want funny stories. Look, we would love your own cunts of the week. They can be stuff you've seen in the news or just stuff from your own life that's really funny, and we'll relay it or we'll play it on the show.
Meantime, we'll be back next week at the usual time of early Saturday morning, Australian Eastern Summer Time. Next week, Honk, I'll be in our Balinese office, but there will be a show of some sort. It could be a full episode. It could be a mini. It could be a best of. God help us, it could be a 45-minute review by the Honk of WWE Crown Jewel in Perth.
Yeah, there's also a few points about Taylor Swift's new album. I just think I quite got through it. By the way, I might do the whole show with John Cena just to spite you.
Well, maybe Rhea Ripley will come to Bali with us.
Maybe AOC will come to Perth with me for Arsfest.
Anyway, as listeners know, we usually like to finish with some audio of particular crookery, moronification, or even a fuckwitticism.
Fuckwitticism, I really like that. You're good with the names from the people who brought you Mike Throbbin Johnson and Tom the Abominable Homan. Fuckwitticism, I like that.
What have you got for us this week, Honky?
Well, as listeners will know, we often end with something funny, sometimes musical, but also often a bit rude, a bit hard-hitting. But it's been a week and an episode, as you've heard, full of grimy political chicanery. So to end this week, we talked about it. We thought we wanted you to maybe take you back to a happier time, a simpler time. So from perhaps the best-loved musical of all time, The Sound of Music, please enjoy the timeless classic song, Epstein Files.
What? Now, Honky, middle-aged straight white guy that I am, I actually saw The Sound of Music 2 weeks ago in a cinema at the Sun Theatre in Yarraville with my daughter, who I demanded dragged me along to the theatre.
In your bedazzled G-string.
Lent to me by Giz Lee. I don't remember a song called The Epstein Files. I do remember Edelweiss.
Yeah, that's what I said. Epstein Files. So thank you for your company. Enjoy. And remember, as Henry always says,
stupid never sleeps.
Epstein Files, Epstein Files, he's exposed them completely. No denials out of style, now you're you're coming off weakly. What's in them so heinous you can't show? Prove you're no transgressor. Epstein Files, Epstein Files. Yes, they'll haunt you forever. Epstein Files, Epstein
denials out of style. Now you're coming off weakly. What's in there so heinous you can't show?